Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, January 13, 2025 working session. The Owen J. Roberts School District Board of Directors utilizes the working session process as a way to consider agenda items as one large committee for the purposes of discussion and debate in full view of the public. Time permitting, the committee chairperson may open the meeting up for public questions on items being discussed by the committee at that time. I'm going to move directly into Finance, Building, and Grounds Committee. Mr. Hamilton.
Good evening. We have two items on our committee agenda today. The first one is a solar energy assessment update and grant applications, and we're going to start with the presentation by Shannon Crooker.
There we go. Okay, much better. Okay, I'm Shannon Crooker. So nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me here this evening. I know you have a busy agenda, so I'll try to make this quick. I'm the Pennsylvania Director of Generation 180. We are a national nonprofit that's focused on equipping individuals and to take action on clean energy in their communities and their homes. And we focus on schools because every community has a school. You bring people together from all walks of life, and you can serve as an example both to the community and to the students who are going to be the future leaders in energy, clean energy and sustainability. So what we do is we map the movement so you can compare yourself to your peers. You're already on the map, so good job. I think you guys are already paving the way for other schools to walk the path. So you're influencers already. At the heart of what we do is we really want to make solar more accessible. There's no skin in the game for us. So we provide these free technical assistance so you can make an informed decision. This information that we're going to talk about tonight is for the Solar for Schools grant application. This is not something that you would go out to bid on. This is preliminary. It gives you all the numbers so that you're ready to go. And it meets the Solar for Schools grant requirements. And of course, once we move forward, fingers crossed that this is a win for you. We want to get the story out there and share so other schools are inspired. And if you ever have any questions, we serve as a resource hub. We have tons of stories on our website, as well as I'm always available on the phone as well as my team. But we'll just hop right into the technical assistance. So what we did, we looked at 3 schools. After a conversation with your facilities team and Jackie, we decided that East Vincent won because it had extra incentives from the federal government that made sense. East Coventry, and pairing that one with the district services building. So we're looking at a array that could offset both of those buildings' energy. And then North Coventry, it had a newer roof and just seemed to make sense with its solar access. So we looked at these. We looked at a cash flow from going out to 20 years, but we also looked at what the 30-year cost savings would be. Next slide. We're going to start with the best one. I know they like to say the best for last, but I think this is the one that makes the sense financially. And one thing I should make clear, I know you have a packet. We met with Jackie and the facilities teams in December, and since then, the solar renewable energy credits have gone down. So the numbers have changed slightly. The new numbers have added anywhere from a half a year to 0.6 years onto your simple payback, push it back a little bit. So the numbers still look good, but the solar renewable energy credits are something that aren't guaranteed, and they're dependent on public policy. So Pennsylvania as a state, we have what's called an alternative energy portfolio standard. And we met that standard in 2021, and we haven't updated that. And we need an act of Congress to change that. So there's no incentive for that number to go up right now. But it could if we end up seeing a strong solar market and if the legislators pass something. So then in the last month, and we usually see them go down maybe once a year, or maybe they'll go up. So it's not a guarantee, so we didn't include that in your net cost. But that's just something to keep in mind when we look at these numbers. They might not match what's in your packet. So at East Vincent, we're looking at a 411 kilowatt system that's going to cost about $1 million. So that equals about $259 a watt. With this specific system, you're going to be able to qualify for the base, which is 30% of the total cost of the project that you're going to get in a cash reimbursement from the government. plus an extra 10%, which brings that number up to 40%. So right there, you're looking at almost 50% of your project covered. But as soon as you add that Solar for School grant, you're over 50% with the project cost. PICO right now has a Act 129 incentive. So that's a 10 cents per kilowatt hour for the energy that's displaced, as long as it doesn't exceed your history or your energy demand. So your net cost for this project that started out as 1 million is now just over $300,000. And it's going to offset 100% of your electricity, which is really nice. These smaller arrays are really great for elementary schools because they're not like a high school that has a high energy use or demand. So it's a little bit easier to offset more energy with your rooftop as opposed to a high school system. Over 30 years, which is essentially the life of the project, which could be more. The warranties are usually anywhere from 25 to 30 years. So that's why we kind of look at this 30-year outlook. You're saving over $1.3 million on your energy bill. If you were to sell the solar renewable energy credits in that first year, you would be able to make an extra 15 grand. Simple payback, 6.4 years, that's pretty good. And positive net present value, as well as the internal rate of return, which is pretty much saying that you are going to make more on this investment than you would make if you were to put this money into the stock market. Next slide, please. Then if we move to North Coventry, we're looking at a little bit smaller, 344, a little bit less. It's a little bit under $1 million at $2.56 per watt. This one you'll notice, this is your 30%, the $264,553 you're going to get from the federal government after it's in operation. And then the Solar for Schools grant, the way it works out, Owen J. Roberts is capped at $300,000 or 30%, whichever is less per project. So with this project being smaller, you're looking at a little bit of a smaller grant that you can apply for. And again, the PICO incentive is a little bit less because it's smaller, but the adjusted net price is pretty darn close to what your other project was. This one almost offsets. We would love to have gotten right to 100%, but you know, the shape of the roof and where the orientation is, that all is a factor. So you make do with what you have, and pretty darn close. I think that's pretty phenomenal. And again, with your electricity bill savings, you're going to save over $1.2 million. And then a 7.5-year payback. It's a little further out than East Coventry, but that's because this one doesn't qualify for that 40%. You're looking at the 30% from the federal government as a cash reimbursement. And then the ground array. This is a little bit larger, almost 650 kilowatts, and it's just over $1.2 million. It ends up being $1.98 per watt, and you're again a 30% elective pay. This one you would be able to get the qualify for the 300,000 and a much larger PICO incentive because it's generating more electricity that's going to offset the grid. So your adjusted net cost here is $560,000. This one, we designed it to be a little bit larger, understanding that the district services office, our center, is not at maximum occupancy right now. It has facilities team and a few others in there, but it's not fully staffed, and you guys have plans to move more people into there. So we just wanted to have a cushion. Usually when it comes to a solar generation, you don't want to exceed 110%, but knowing that there's going to be extra demand in that building, we want to make sure we give it a little bit of a buffer. Going too high above what we can expect because of anything above 120% or closer to 150 or more.
In the business department, we have investment fundamentals. Will be a semester 0.5 credit in-person elective class. The business department actually surveyed all of the current business students enrolled in biz courses at the beginning of this year, and they indicated that that was the subject that they had the most interest in. So this will be a hands-on learning and practical application of all the different principles of investing. So that's it for the new courses. We have one course that will be converted from an in-person to an online course, and that's sociology. The reason for that is that there's a good deal of student interest in taking the course in an online format because they can't fit the course in as an in-person class. And then also offering the course as an online course will open up a scheduling slot for the sociology and sport class. So that will be switched to online. We have a few courses that will be dropped from being offered due to waning interest. So that will be hybrid physical education, excuse me, hybrid English 10, IB literature and performance, IB environmental systems, IB design and technology. So those will be dropped. And then we have a couple of name changes. Those are both in the math department. So applied and college prep math topics will be changed to applied and college prep financial algebra. The reason for those changes is that the curriculum for both of the courses has been updated to incorporate financial literacy and algebraic standards and concepts, which will also hopefully allow those courses to be approved by the NCAA Eligibility Center. And then we also have a few changes in world language courses related to dual enrollment status. So as many of you probably know, the state requires any courses that receive or are eligible for dual enrollment weight or dual enrollment credit to be weighted at the highest level possible. Most of our dual enrollment classes are already AP or IB courses. There are a few world language courses, however, that are currently college prep or honors courses. So in order to avoid that confusion of a course being college prep or honors, but actually being a higher weight, we're going to change the name of the course so there isn't any more confusion. So honors French 4 and college prep French 5 will be changed to dual enrollment French 4 and dual enrollment French 5. Honors Spanish 4 and CP Spanish 5 will be switched to dual enrollment Spanish 4 and 5. And then honors Latin 4 will be switched to dual enrollment Latin 4. And those weights will also be changed for those courses as well. The weights are actually switched this year in the courses, but we weren't able to change the names because the students were already sending out their college applications and their self-reported academic record before we had the confirmation of the changes for dual enrollment. And you can't make those changes after the fact. So, and then we have a few credit changes. So for health and phys ed, the 9th grade phys ed class is going to be going from 0.4 credit to 0.5. Mr. Kohler will get into that change, the reason for that change more when he talks about graduation requirements in a few minutes. And then our lab science courses, AP Chemistry, AP Bio, AP Physics 1, and those 2 AP Physics C courses that I mentioned earlier, they're going to increase slightly in credit from 1.2 to 1.25 credit due to a slight increase in instructional time.
Any questions from the committee? I have a quick question about we're dropping the hybrid PE. Are our pass rates for online PE and hybrid PE similar or?
I couldn't tell you exactly. My guess is that the hybrid phys ed might be a little bit higher, but it's a lot lower of a number of students that take the course. So there's a lot more students that take the cyber phys ed course.
Are we doing better with numbers with passing for the online then? I would hate to see we drop the hybrid PE if our pass rates are higher than in the online.
Yeah, the online phys ed has a unique need for a lot of different reasons for specific groups of students. For instance, the students that go to Brandywine Virtual Academy part-time, some of our students that come in late, just all sorts of very unique circumstances. And the hybrid course for a lot of different reasons doesn't schedule as well for students. Not as many students are requesting it. So it's not offered as many times during the day. So then students aren't as able to schedule it because it's not offered as many times. It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, the fewer times it's offered, the less able students are to schedule it. But we can only offer as many sections as students request.
Question of the new courses, the top of the handout had new courses, for example, the English, social studies, et cetera. Are those available online or in person?
Which courses specifically?
So it was the English, social studies. I'm more interested in the physics. Those
Mhm.
would, I would guess, be in person.
Yeah, the AP Physics C, both
Right.
of those courses are in person, the fundamentals of chemistry and physics. Those are both in-person courses.
The national park.
That's an online course.
That's
I wish. I'll go with them.
Thank you.
Sure.
I wanted to also ask about the fundamentals of chemistry and physics. Is there prereqs for those? That only 11th and 12th graders are allowed to take it?
It's, offhand, I don't recall, but typically the students would just need to have taken the 9th and 10th grade science before that.
Biology.
Mhm.
Right. That's why those students would typically be taking it in 11th, 12th grade.
Any questions from the full board?
I had a question about the 3 IB classes that are being dropped.
Mhm.
Are they, I understand they're being dropped because of low enrollment. I know that different classes are required depending on what your project or your track is going to be
Mhm.
to getting your IB certificate. We're not adding anymore, so does that mean we've reduced the number of possible tracks that students can follow within IB?
No, not at all. So these courses, the IB design course has actually never run since we've offered it. The IB environmental systems course, has only run once or twice, and that was back in the teens, pre-COVID. And the lit and performance is also the same. So they're just courses that we added early on in running the IB program, and students just generally were not interested in them, and they tend to have far more interest in the year-long courses that run multiple sections every year, the philosophy course, the business course, the business management course. That just seems to be where students are most interested, where we're running, like I said, multiple sections. But it doesn't have those changes don't have anything to do, or dropping these courses will not affect the career tracks that are available to students.
So these 3 courses, these 3 IB courses aren't currently have 0 enrollment right now.
They haven't run in either ever or in several years.
Tracking the IB enrollment is it stable, is it increasing, decreasing as we're looking at scheduling?
I don't know how many students are interested in this year's sophomore class to go into the junior class. Those applications are still coming in. And Mr. Kirby handles those applications, so he hasn't gotten those numbers to me yet. That's not typical that I would have that information at this point, but the core 1 juniors and the core 2 seniors, those cohorts are both a bigger section of students. So 25 to 28 students, I would say, offhand, and that's been pretty typical for those cohort sizes. And then the other courses, the other IB courses that run don't require students to be in the IB program in order to take them, although IB students are given preference to schedule those courses. But we do allow other students to schedule them, and they're always full. So there are students that are very interested in those courses.
Any other questions from the full board?
Caroline, I just have one question. I'm looking here at the name changes and adding dual enrollment to a number of courses here. So will that allow our kids through an articulation agreement to get college credit for those courses that we're calling it dual enrollment?
Yeah,
Okay.
so these courses that are listed here, along with a number of, basically all of our AP and IB courses were set up with Immaculata University this summer. We created a partnership with them where all of those classes are now available for dual enrollment credit, either 3 or 6 credits per class during the year. So all of those courses, students can pay for the dual enrollment credit. It's about, I think it's $300. And the reason it's a great opportunity, and I've actually taken advantage of this with my daughter at Downingtown. She's struggles with test taking. She's not going to take the AP test, and probably not do great on that. I hope she's not listening. I know she's not listening. Why would she listen? So having that opportunity to pay for the dual enrollment credit with Immaculata was much more of a sure thing than taking the AP test. So having the ability to get that credit from a quality school like Immaculata gives her the opportunity to transfer those credits
Great.
into her
Yeah.
school.
Thank you. And I just want to, I know Steve Kohler's here too, but I want to thank you for that. I know that's been an effort for us to create more dual enrollment opportunities. And I know the Immaculata agreement that we just brought forward this year has been really helpful with that. There's a lot more flexibility. So
Mhm.
I commend you and Steve and the rest of the team for offering those college level courses for our kids.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the full board? Can we move on to middle school? Oh, do you want? Okay.
A little more simple. Good evening, everyone. A little more simple, I think, for middle school with this. We're just, as far as new courses, we're looking to add an elective to our program of studies. We're looking to kind of hit as many student interests as we can with our electives. So drama has become, not that it hasn't always been big at the middle school, but interest seems to be peaking right now. This year we're running 2 musicals at the middle school instead of 1, which is fantastic. Hundreds of 100 kids or so that are involved in those productions, from those out in front and those backstage. So there's a great interest right now. So we have an ELA teacher who was interested in offering drama as an elective. That would be a semester course for us, and every other day semester course for us. Wouldn't really impact any other studies for students. It would just be another option for them of an elective that they could take. So those who are in honors still can take honors ELA, no change with that. So that's it as far as new courses for the middle school.
Any questions from the committee?
What grade do students have to be at the table?
It can mean either. So all of our electives that we offer at the middle school are blended grades. So they're open to 7th and 8th grade students.
So could a student take this twice?
In the same year?
No, 7th and then 8th.
So yeah, they could. Yeah, we ask our teachers who teach electives to have kind of 2 years of rotating curriculum, if you would, what they're teaching. It could be the same concept, but they change. You know, if they're doing reproductions or if they're improv, kind of change the topics and things like that. You could still be teaching improv, but change the topic of the lesson or what they're improving on, for example. But yes, they're asked to take have a rotation of 2 that they can swing in and out each year.
Any questions from the full board?
Easy. Okay, thank you.
I will open up questions to anybody in the public. Do we have any? Oh, they're all set. Sorry, I couldn't see. Any questions? Okay. Can I have a motion to for the high school program of studies 2020-25 changes to be moved to the full board?
So
And can I have a motion to move the middle school programs and studies changes for 2025, 2026 to the full board?
Second.
Thank you. That is all.
Thank you, Ms. Sabo. We are moving to Legislative and Policy Committee. Ms. Munson.
All right. The Legislative and Policy Committee consists of me, just want to make sure we got the right people. Ms. Sabo, Ms. Evans, and Mr. Harmons. Okay. So first policy that's on the list is the graduation policy. We take a look at this one. We're making a couple of changes specifically to the students attending partner programs section and a little bit of modification for the credit requirements for graduation. I have some more information on that.
Yep, absolutely. I'm actually going to hand it off to Mr. Kohler for policy 217 graduation and then 4.0 to regulation 213A for awarding original high school credit through alternative measures. So, Mr. Kohler.
Good evening. So with 217, it's being driven by, or the recommended adjustments to 217 are being driven by two things. Number one, starting with the class of 2028, all students in the Commonwealth will need to acquire a financial literacy credit. And we were looking at making some changes, and we figured if we were going to adjust the graduation policy, at this time, it just made sense to fold that in. The other component of it is over the course of the last couple of years, we have struggled because some of our students who attend partner programs are required to take an online class in order to graduate from high school. They're the only students in the high school that are required to take an online class, and it's because that travel time between here and their partner program reduces the amount of time that they have in the building, which then forces them to do something that nobody else has to do, which would be to take that online class on top of all of their other things. We have seen reduced rates of success in those online classes that those students are forced to take, and it just seemed like an equity issue, seemed like a fairness issue, and we were looking to resolve that. So the changes that we are recommending are both to support those students and to support that financial literacy requirement. So in looking at at all of this work, I looked at a lot of different program of studies. So the first adjustment that you'll see in that diploma section is that sentence that says, in addition to meeting the requirements for graduation established by this board, all students will be required to demonstrate their post-secondary preparedness and meet statewide graduation requirements. A number of other schools had something similar to this and I thought it was important to add this in because technically a student can meet all of their credits here, but if they don't fulfill one of those Pennsylvania graduation pathways, then they're not getting their diploma. So we wanted to include something in here that indicated that in addition to our local requirement, they needed to meet those state requirements. So that was why we're recommending that that sentence gets added. And then the second piece is you'll see that added section there where it says students attending partner programs. So as I alluded to, students that attend partner programs lose just seat time in a building because they're traveling either from here to TCHS or traveling from Octorara to here. They typically have one fewer instructional period over the course of the day, which was forcing them into taking that online course. And so what we are recommending is that we put this line in that says for these students, the principal at their discretion has the authority to waive any curricular graduation requirement that is in excess of state mandates if the student would be required to take an online class to fulfill the graduation requirement because the class is unable to fit into the student's daily schedule due to other requirements. However, the principal may not waive graduation credit requirements to allow students to graduate with fewer than 24 credit minimum. So again, this would be used in a very finite circumstance and only for students who physically cannot fit a course required for graduation into their schedule, provided that they've already met the state minimum for that course. So again, a student may want to have things waived because they want to take other things. Like that's not where this would be utilized. It would only be for those students who would be required to take that online class in order to graduate. So in terms of the deletions, number one, there's a table that was included in here that we are deleting just because it was for all of the students that was applicable to have already graduated. That was last year's graduating class was the last group that was appropriate for. The second table in here says beginning with the class of 2025, and there's no changes in that. And then the third table beginning with the class of 2028, there's just a couple of minor adjustments. So one, for physical education, in the previous table, it was 1.4 credits. It's going up to 1.5 credits. The reason for that is, and this is kind of connected to Dr. Slade's presentation about new courses, as well as the presentation that we'll do toward the end, talking about software systems. But we are doing a lot of work to simplify the high school schedule this year. There were a lot of different complexities within the schedule, courses that were 0.2 credits, courses that were 0.4 credits, courses that met 2 out of 5 days, courses that met 4 out of 5 days. We're going to shift to an A/B schedule next year. And that is going to greatly reduce the number of different course patterns that we have, which is going to make for a lot more efficient schedule. So with that, courses that met 2 out of 5 days previously, when you only have every other day, you've got to make an adjustment to that. So we're moving all of our credits to 0.25 intervals. And so with PE going from 1.4 to 1.5, it's not significantly adding PE to student schedules, but it is going to clean up the schedule a little bit. The other thing that you see here is the addition of personal finance at 0.5 as that standalone course. Again, the class of 2028 is the first course or the first class that is relative to. And then the electives go to 8.5. On the previous table, electives were 9.1, which since I've started here always bothered me because there was nothing that you could take that was a 0.1 credit class. Like it was what we needed to add in to get it to 24. So now, again, shifting courses to 0.25 intervals, students have a direct means of achieving all of these. It just makes everything cleaner. The only thing on this is there's a couple of asterisks there. Students can take either a 0.5 credit personal finance course, which is going to be a standalone course offered to all students beginning in 11th grade, or they can take one of those 2 math classes that Dr. Slade talked about earlier that we're changing the credits for. Those are 1.0 credit offerings. If a student takes one of those courses, they don't need to take the standalone personal finance class, but they will need to take an extra half credit elective to get to their 24 total. So that is what we are recommending in terms of the changes to the graduation policy.
All right. Thank you.
What
very
was
much
this?
for
What's
that.
the state requirement for PE credits?
So the state requirement is a minimum of 1.0 health and PE credits with a student having a PE experience in each of their 4 years.
Okay, why are we above that?
Where we stand in terms of so I guess a couple of different answers to that. Number one, to get students to have a PE experience over the course of all 4 years, just naturally kinds of lends itself to being over that. Again, if they take a half credit class in their freshman year, then you take a half credit class in your sophomore year, you get to that minimum, but you don't have anything in your junior and senior year, you're not meeting what those state requirements are. I think the spirit of that requirement as well is that students are that we're embedding healthy habits for students, that we're giving them opportunities to be physically fit every year, which is why that has been offered every year. In looking at all of this, we looked across the county. Where we stand is we're kind of right in the middle. Nobody is at that 1.0 minimum across the county. Where we stand, like I said, the 1.5 PE and then the 0.5 health on top of that kind of puts us right in the middle of our peer schools.
Okay, so follow up then, if you have to take one every year, then shouldn't the minimum be 2?
It should, and that is somewhat of the concession that we are making here. So we're going to adjust these credits to the PE classes are going to go to 0.5 credit classes. So you can take one in the first semester of your sophomore year, another one in the second semester of your sophomore year. You could also take one in the first semester of your sophomore year, one in the second semester of your junior year, one in the first semester of your senior year. In structuring it like that, it is going to give students greater flexibility. If a student so chooses, they can stack their PE classes a little bit earlier in their career to open up additional options later on, which we know some students who are taking particularly a lot of singleton courses have looked to open up additional options so that they can take, 4 or 5 different AP classes in their senior year. This will give them the opportunity to do that, where in the past they haven't had that opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Other questions from the committee? I have one typographical question. Total credits required still has 3 asterisks, and I believe we removed the 3 asterisk comment.
Yes, we can
So I
remove
think we
those.
can remove those 3 asterisks.
Mhm.
I understand why they're there, having seen earlier drafts, but I don't
Yep.
think they're needed anymore.
Yeah, we'll remove those.
Thank you. And I'll open up to the full board. Questions about these changes?
I imagine that when a student takes the year-long math course that will incorporate personal finance, do you have to have that curriculum approved by the state so that they know that when they look at the student's record, theoretically, the student has taken the required personal finance course? It's just not going to say a standalone personal finance.
Yeah, we don't need to get it specifically approved, but what we do need to do is to back map and make sure that that course is inclusive of all of the standards for personal finance, and that's the work that we're doing. That's also why we're changing the course names for those two, because we want to make it more transparent that those are covering all of those financial literacy standards.
Out of curiosity, the class of 2028 is current freshmen, right?
Correct.
So we're not prepared to teach the personal finance class currently for people who potentially won't be here when this class goes into requirement status?
Yeah, we are not. The standards for that course weren't released until earlier this year. So we're starting to look at that and do the curriculum work right now. We also, that personal finance class will be limited to 11th and 12th grade students, because we felt like to really meet the spirit of this initiative at the state level, that course is geared towards 11th and 12th grade students. We felt like if we were offering it to a 14-year-old ninth grader, like they're not going to get out of that what we want them to get out of it. So we will be prepared to offer that course to the class of 2028 when they are 11th graders.
Would just add to that, we currently have a personal finance class in the business education department, and so it is an open elective for students to take now. But as Mr. Kohler said, the proposed standards have not yet been approved. When they are, our new course needs to be fully aligned to that.
You're welcome.
That it for questions? And just one comment, thank you. I know this represents a lot of work, and it's integrated with all of our, state requirements, changes to how we want to do scheduling for students, and really appreciate the amount of looking at things from all different sides that is going into this proposed change. So from the committee, may I have a motion to move policy 217 forward to the full board?
So
Second.
Thank you. Moving on to section 4.02, regulation 213A, awarding of original high school credit through alternative methods. Are you also presenting on this one? Thank you.
Yes, and this one is much more simple. So you'll see 2 places that the word guidance was deleted and replaced in one space with school and one place with counseling. But the real reason that we're making an update to this is in the course advancement by evaluation. There is one new bullet point under guidelines that says per Act 35, students are not permitted to use evaluation to complete their personal finance requirement. In all of the literature and language that we've received about the personal finance requirement, they've been very clear that students can't test out by evaluation. And so we just wanted to include that in the policy to be transparent about that.
All right, questions from the committee? Questions from the full board? May I have a motion to move regulation 213A, awarding of original high school credit through alternative methods, forward to the full board?
So
Second. Thank you. Next is section 4.03, policy 201, admission of students. Dr. Benton, presenting on this one?
Sure, thank you. So we're looking at 201, which is admission of students. We made changes to the regulation 201A, which is the second document will look at a 201. So while we look at just when we work with policy, while we look at regulations, if there's a policy connected to it and we see if there's any need for changes, altercations to that policy, and there wasn't. So this is just a review of 201. So we're just reviewing it, and you'll see when we go through that process, it would say last revised or last reviewed, I should say. There'll be an addition on the front page, last reviewed, and it'll have the date of January 2025. And if we're going to move, we'll move in.
Yeah,
ahead.
let's go ahead and
Yep.
cover the 404 Regulation 201A, early admission to kindergarten and first grade.
Great. So the main reason we started to look at this policy was, number one, it's dated October 15th, 2018. So we're 6 years out, almost 7 years out. And we like our policies to be 4 to 5 years at the oldest in age, and also with full day kindergarten. It was a good time to look at this policy. So, regulation. So you'll see the changes that we've are moving to. And we really wanted to make the ease and the flow of this regulation a little more sort of less cumbersome for a child and family that's wishing to sort of excel or early admission into kindergarten or first grade. So this is both K and 1. The evaluation process is more of a school readiness process, not as much connected to any type of diagnostics with psychological assessments. We've also made sure that we put the dates in there as far as when this would occur. We're not changing the dates for admission for early K or first grade, meaning we're still looking at a September 1st deadline, or in first grade, September 1st through October 15th. So we made sure we redefined that, and also working in the principal to the conversation, and not just the school psych superintendent and board. So they're a key piece throughout the process, sort of allowing some flexibility. Although the school psych will continue to be part of this process, there is some flexibility if school psychs aren't available. We have other staff members who are qualified to do this. And then finally, not gaining school board approval. So the reason for not gaining school board approval for each and every case, and we don't have a lot of these, we might have a handful, maybe four at the most, 5 during the summer. But it's nice to be able to tell the parents based off of our school board schedule in the summer. It's not often, so this will allow us to communicate quicker to parents if their child is starting earlier, either in kindergarten or first grade.
Right, so linking that back to the other one, it does say, may admit a child, blah, 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 upon written parental request, recommendation of the district psychologist, and approval of the superintendent in accordance with established administrative regulations. So do we need to do we actually need to modify that recommendation of the district psychologist if we're taking them out of the key position? The readiness evaluation in 201A is going to be, it's not going to be done by a psychologist necessarily. It's sent to the building principal. The principal sends it to the superintendent for approval.
Yeah, we might want to change that to recommendation of the school principal.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was thinking we would need to change it. So recommendation of the principal, the approval of the superintendent in accordance with established administrative regulations at the bottom of page 1 on code 201.
So if everybody's fine with that change, we can have that change reflected in a first reading at the January board meeting for this specific one.
Yeah, so committee members, are you following what I'm suggesting? And okay, so Ms. Sabo, if you open up 201 and look at the last paragraph on the first page, it starts with the board may admit to kindergarten a child whose 5th birthday falls. And I'm suggesting that instead of saying upon written parental request recommendation of the district psychologist and approval of the superintendent, that we change the district psychologist over to principal, given the change in direction from a psychological evaluation to a school readiness evaluation.
Do we do principal or relevant school personnel?
Good question.
Ultimately, so it's just to go back 2 steps, it's actually listed twice. It's actually listed under the beginners and under kindergarten and first grade. So it would be twice. Being that sort of the principal is going to orchestrate this whole process, and then ultimately the principal will gather the information from the school personnel, whether it's a school psych or anybody else, and then send to the superintendent for approval. I sort of like principal.
Sort of putting them in a key role and calling that out in both the
Both documents.
policy and the regulation.
Hypothetical here, and not that I think anything like this would happen, but based on the way it's worded, then we're saying that a principal could evaluate the child and then make a recommendation without any other school personnel or psychologist evaluating the child. And that's like, is that what we're saying is okay to happen?
I read it as the recommendation of the principal. So after they get the information, so the board may admit as a beginner, a child whose 6th birthday falls September 1st, but for October 15th, proposed first grade year, and who demonstrates readiness to enter by the first grade of the school term upon written parental request and then recommendation by the principal. If it said like evaluated or tested.
On part 3, it says the child should be evaluated for early admission by the school psychologist or relevant school personnel. And then we're giving the principal full authority to make the recommendation to the superintendent. We're basically giving the authority at some point for a principal to evaluate and then recommend a superintendent without anybody else ever seeing the child.
Show me where you're looking at. When you started. Are you
So
still looking?
number 3, under procedures for early admission.
Okay, so you're on the regulation. Okay,
Regulation, okay, yeah.
sorry, I was on the policy. Go ahead.
Sorry.
A child will be evaluated for early admission by the school psychologist and or relevant school personnel.
And then we go down to number 6 versus the principal's recommendation will then be sent. Then we have more than one person looking over an evaluation, not only the evaluator moving the child forward.
For the regulation. So with the regulation, this will guide what we do. So the policy is sort of like a shortcut stating the principal will provide the superintendent with the recommendation, but in order to get that recommendation, we'll follow the regulation. And within the regulation, it talks about how that process works based off of just exactly what you stated.
Okay. As long as we're more than one person. and
Yes.
able to see, evaluate.
Yeah.
before we
Yes.
move it forward.
Yep. Yes.
Is there a cost associated with these assessments and evaluations?
No, just personnel pay who already work in the summer already. So there's school psychs that we have working in the summer or any personnel. So typically school psychs doing it, there's no extra cost.
We charge a fee for these assessments.
We do not.
Should we?
No.
Asked and answered.
Any other questions from the committee? Questions from the full board?
I do have a question about, with these evaluations happening at the building level and at the principal level, and the principal is making a recommendation to the superintendent. How do we ensure that fidelity amongst the 5 buildings? For instance, it is not, you're not more likely to get a recommendation at this building versus that building.
Typically, when we do this, there's a psychologist that sort of takes point on the assessments and things like that, and diagnostics, and that would be there's one that does that. So we regulate that to one school psychologist who is our own school psychologist working in the summertime.
So the school psychologist most likely would be meeting any child regardless of what building they were in.
Correct.
And there's kind of a rubric that they would use to determine eligible, not.
They would use the sort of assessment benchmarks, rubric scales, whatever you're going to use in order to sort of judge and evaluate that process based off of school readiness.
So the parent would get a uniform response.
Here we, yes.
However, unlikely to kind of follow up Rita's earlier question. While that psychologist may be uniform across the district, the principals are unique. It does read as if, as if the principals do have discretion to accept a recommendation that says, yes, the child's ready, but at their discretion say, no. However unlikely, it does leave space for that. Yeah, but we're in that, and okay with that.
I think when you're having multiple people make a decision for different circumstances, there's always going to be variables tied to that. We don't have a lot of these each summer. Some schools might have 0, some schools might have 1 or 2. But with different people, I mean, sure, there's always, yeah, I would say there's that chance.
I would just add, I don't think anyone makes these decisions in isolation, but I understand the concern, from the principal's perspective, they put a lot into what the psychologist is saying as far as the readiness. But it also gives the principal some flexibility to use some other criteria as well, other than just I'll say the educational assessments that we typically do. But I can say with much confidence that it would not be a unilateral decision on this. The principals will be consulting with, and probably even expanded to be the psychologists, but we also have other personnel there, counselors and stuff that can be giving us information on readiness as well.
And we have a similar process we use for acceleration. So if a child's in our school already, 5th grade, 6th grade, 3rd grade, and there's an acceleration process for a specific student, meetings and assessments and things like that, ultimately principals making the decision with, as Dr. Stout said, it's informed, they're getting input from all sorts of people on the student's team, and sort of making that decision sort of collectively, but ultimately sort of processing that.
And take it, our superintendent would be looking for the evidence of the principal having consulted others within the school before he gave his approval?
Yes.
Right.
And not just the superintendent, Brad would be looking at it as well. So there's multiple people that look at it.
All right, so shall I have a motion from the board to pass regulation? So this is on item 4.04, regulation 201A, early admission to kindergarten and 1st grade, pass it to the full board with that small change of moving from the school psychologist to the building principal. May I have a motion?
So
And then on item 4.05, policy 350, oh, sorry, that was, actually, I meant the 4.03, policy 201, admission of students was the one that required the small change of wording. So, Mr. Harmonos, are you okay with your motion to apply to section 4.02?
4.03.
Or, I'm sorry, 4.03?
4.03 was previously no change, and we are making a slight change in wording.
Yes.
And then 4.04.
And then 4.04, we're passing as written to the full board.
Okay.
And you'll move for that one
Both
as well.
of those.
Okay. Agreed. Yeah. All right, thank you, everybody. And you have Ms. Sabo as the second. All right, thank you. On to section 4.05, policy 351, controlled substance abuse, previous title, illegal drug and alcohol abuse, and previous number 351.1.
So as sort of, if you recall, there was a suggestion, and sort of covering everything here, suggestion to notify the board that if changes are being made by the district or administration or suggestions, it would be sort of, that would be the reason for this going to that. This is PSBA's suggestion to change. So there's just change in the no change in the language, but just change in the title of it. So previously illegal drug and alcohol abuse, now it's called controlled substance abuse. So it's just no change within the policy, just change the title.
Can I ask why we're not changing that same language in the policy? Because when you read through the policy, it does omit legal drugs from, like, if you read the first very part, the statement of policy, under 1, to prohibit the use and consumption or possession of any illegal drugs or beverage alcohol on the job or by any employee. So what about legal drugs that they do not have a prescription for? Or they don't have, I mean, it still is one of those, I understand it's illegal, but you can still possess drugs that you're not supposed to be taking when you work, heavy equipment. In certain circumstances, you're not supposed to be taking them while working on the job. I don't know if that qualifies. Does that qualify as an illegal? I just want to make sure our wording, because they're changing the title from to controlled substance, but we're not changing it to controlled substances within the policy itself. So I just feel like there must be a reason for changing the title, that it doesn't cover everything.
Could it possibly be because you can have a drug which is not controlled? Wait, no, the other way around. A drug which is controlled but could be legal. And yeah, I guess we would need a lawyer to address why.
It's another hypothetical.
the
If
two
they
different
legalized
terminologies, yeah.
marijuana,
Right,
and then it becomes legal.
right, the abuse. So both titles, the former and the current, both say abuse. So the previous title was illegal drug and alcohol abuse. The new one is controlled substance abuse. And alcohol, right, exactly. And nobody can hear anything that you guys are saying when you don't have your meeting. Maybe I should open this up to the full board so that you can talk
There you go.
into your microphones. How's that?
Sure. So the policy change, the way I'm reading it, is controlled substance, combines illegal drug and alcohol abuse into one concise statement. But when you read the policy, it still keeps them separate. It says both in each instance. So you can change it just to make it more concise, but it's still covered by explicitly saying both terms.
And this is how it was recommended to us by PSBA. So we just took the language that they shared with us.
So if we're not comfortable with it, we don't have to make it.
Correct.
I personally like the change better. I think it covers more than what is within the policy by saying illegal drugs for beverage alcohol, which I feel like that's backwards too. But I feel like controlled substance covers more than illegal drugs when
Yeah.
we're looking at, and the other part within that one also, on the job by any employee. Shouldn't we be putting while on campus? Because if their hours and their day is done and they're on campus and they decide to have something, isn't that,
Do we have employees who work remotely?
employees that work remotely?
Yes, at times.
Right, I don't know that we would necessarily want to limit it to on campus. I think it has more to do with their job hours, right?
I just wanna make sure we're covering all bases, is what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
don't wanna, they're done teaching their last class and you know, just
So I guess we could ask, should we have an HR review of this to see whether the wording around would the wording cause any issues with the way it is in terms of us being able to use this policy against an employee who is past their hours technically not working, but still on campus? I believe we do.
We do, but does that affect the way that you can then discipline? Would be my question. So the discipline's the same if the employee is engaging in illegal drugs or alcohol, if it's while they're on hours or off hours, like the discipline's the same is I guess would be the question. But is that discipline different than what this policy?
Well, I think the point is that during work hours, they should not be drinking alcohol. While they're on campus, they should not be drinking alcohol, but it's okay if they drink alcohol when they're not on campus and not during work hours. Is that acceptable to everyone? Right.
My suggestion would be, I mean, we could vet it through our solicitor. However, PSBA, when they put these out, I mean, they have a team of solicitors that vet these policies before they make the changes. So my recommendation would be to keep it as is, but if the board would like, we can certainly have our solicitor vet this policy.
All right, so I'll take it back to the committee. Is there an interest in moving it to the full board? So I'll ask whether there's a motion to move policy 351, controlled substance abuse, previous title illegal drug and alcohol abuse, and previous number 351.1 forward to the full board for approval. Well, I'm asking whether there is a motion. If there's no motion, then it won't go to the full board.
I think we're sending it back to committee.
Yeah, well, I said I can, if the board would like that. But so that's gonna be up to the board whether we
Right,
do that.
so-
I'm not a
If we don't-
lawyer by any means, but I do work in the medical field, and by the way this is worded, I don't believe that, like, there is definitely exceptions that you can do by the way it's worded. Based on hospital policy and stuff like that, this is not worded in a way that covers all of the bases from a medical standpoint. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so legally I'm not sure. So this, for me, I would prefer to take it back.
Okay,
I think the other caution is that there are things that are legal in some places, not legal in other places, so the term
Right.
legal becomes muddy. So that should be on that standpoint.
all right, so we're going to keep it in committee for legal review around potentially changing words in the actual policy more in alignment with controlled substance. Does that sound? You got that?
Just to be clear,
Mhm.
and I'm almost repeating what you said, Jen, or Mrs. Munson, that we want to look at changing the wording. First kind of question is changing the wording to changing the illegal drugs or alcoholic beverages to controlled substance throughout the policy. Correct?
Correct.
That's
So we
more of an
wanna
accurate
consider that.
depiction.
And then we also want to look at the interaction of this policy along with the policy of on campus to make sure that it's covering us from an HR discipline standpoint in all the right situations.
Understand.
All right, thank you.
We're gonna
Oh.
move, we're gonna actually, at this point, the rest of them are connected to this, so it would behoove us to sort of stop at this point and bring back everything.
And just a reminder, when we do get to those that, you know, a lot of these other ones, the 451, the 551, used to be 3 separate policies. We will, I think, be combining them with this move also. I believe that should be it for legislative and policy. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Okay, so we are moving on to agenda item 5, Ojara Mission Vision Shared Value. Dr. Stout.
So now I know why we typically do policy at the end of these meetings. But But that said, this is something that I'm really excited to talk about, as all of you know here. One of our goals, district goals this school year, was to take a look at our mission, vision, and shared values as a district. And I think what we had previously was good, but it certainly was outdated. So it was really time to look at this. So we put together, and Frank, if you can go to the next slide for me. We put together a steering team. We had about 40 people on that steering team, and you can see from the slide here, it was a diverse steering team. We had 3 school board members on that team. We had students that I want to add provided some valuable insight for us when we were looking at our mission, vision, and shared values. We had parents in the community, we had teachers, and we had administrators. So that our team could participate in this process, we had a facilitator come in, Judy Wilson, who has done a lot of work in this type of work. She actually was involved with the CCIU when they recently did their mission and vision work as well. So Judy came in 3 times. We met as a committee in October, November, and December. Each of those nights was very intensive. A lot of discussion, a lot of feedback, a lot of debating. But I feel really, really good about the product that we're going to be presenting tonight. And then we included here on this slide, our goal was to consider the needs of today's students, as well as our hopes for them and the staff, and to craft a mission, vision, and shared instead of shared values. And these tools will be our guiding forces of OJR's work for years to come. I will mention this is going to be part of our comprehensive plan. We're in the process of reviewing our comprehensive plan, but when you do your comprehensive plan, you take a look at your mission, vision, shared values. So this will be part of one package that we will be rolling out to our entire staff and our community. And really, this is going to be the guidepost for the work that we do in the future. So as I said, I'm really excited about the committee work and about the process and the work that we did here. So Frank, next slide, please. So the mission that we agreed upon as a committee, and we did share it with the group and allowed folks to weigh in, and this was widely accepted as the mission for the district moving forward. But I'm just going to read it here: to inspire every person. And if you notice here, I want to point out, we didn't just limit it to students, because we feel that it's important for everyone in our school system. So to inspire every person in the OJR learning community to think critically, act compassionately, and achieve success within a culture of access, dignity, and belonging for all. So again, the mission is basically for a school district. It defines our work and our purpose and what we're here for. So again, a lot of work went into this, and this will guide our work as a district moving forward. So next slide, please. So when we get into our vision is really what we aspire to be as a district. So the vision that we agreed upon as a committee, well, we will be a learning community that embraces a growth mindset, engages in continuous innovation, celebrates each person's uniqueness, and creates a culture of belonging for all. So you'll notice in both our mission and our vision, the last several words are the same: a belonging for all. And this should be no surprise to anyone that has watched the work of our school district for the last several years. Sense of belonging has always been a goal for us as a school district. And now we wanted to take it a step further to have it as part of our mission and vision, that everyone feels that they belong in our OJR learning community. So next slide, please. So our mission and vision that I just went over leads us to our values. And this is really, as a district, and I'll read here what we have here as an Owen J. Roberts. At Owen J. Roberts, our values inspire us to become the best version of ourselves, lead with thought and purpose, and serve as the foundation for our decision-making. And you can see here the 6 values that our committee came up with. I do want to mention this was, we had a lot of student input on this area as well. But I'll go over each one of these. For students first, and not that we had these in any particular order, but that's number 1. The work that we do, we have this conversation quite a bit. none of us would be here if it wasn't for the students. So our priority continues to be and will remain that students are first. We think it's important that we have authentic relationships within our school system, and that's with our students and staff, staff to staff. So again, this is just isn't for student. These are the values of our entire school system. Belonging and kindness, seeing some repetition there with that belonging. A collaborative approach. You know, when we were working as a group, we all agreed you can't do it in isolation. An essential skill that everyone needs in life is to be able to collaborate. So we're going to continue to emphasize that in collaborative approaches. Respecting multiple perspectives. We do have a diverse school system, and it is important that we recognize the multiple perspectives of the students and staff within our system. And then last but certainly not least is that continuous growth mindset and innovation. So those are the values of our district. And again, when we roll it out, upon getting approval of the comprehensive plan, this is something that we will share with all employees. We will also emphasize this with our students as well. And this will really be the framework for how we operate. So I'd like to thank all the people that served on the committee. Again, there were 40+ people that gave up a lot of their time. But I thought that the conversations were fantastic. I thought they were very reflective. And I think it has led us to products that I am extremely proud of and that I think really define our school district today and moving forward. So that's the mission, vision, and shared values work. Dr. Soter will be sharing the comprehensive plan with you in the future, but these items will be included in that comprehensive plan as well. So I'll take any questions that board members may have. And not to put anyone on the spot, but we do have 3 board members that were on the committee. Mrs. Peterson, Mr. Rotoli, and Mrs. Sabo. So if you want to add anything, please do.
President, I think they're new. Congratulations. Seriously. I have one question. Someone who wasn't on the committee. So the first one, our mission say to inspire every person. And the second one, it says we will be a learning community. Why does it say we are a learning community? Looking into the future instead of.
It's not saying that we will be a learning community. It's saying we will be a learning community that.
Did it say we are a learning community?
But it's also ongoing. Learning should never be,
Right.
it shouldn't be stagnant.
So
So when we
this
say
mission
we are,
But it doesn't say our values will inspire. It says our values inspire. I think from there. But I think it's one.
And it's a new mission, vision, and value statement. So we will be a learning community that the mission just came into being, mission, vision, value. To inspire everything that goes in the future, using this as a touchstone for all decisions, hires, policies.
Yeah, I think that saying, if you say we are, then the work is done. If you say we will, then you're aspiring to go further.
And it is supposed to be aspirational. Was one of the directions we had about doing this work was
Not that
April and I had a very long discussion about the word aspirational, so no, we did. It was, when we say that these meetings went for a bit, yes, there was definition work that went into it as well. But I will echo Dr. Stout that, you know, this was one of the things that was most inspiring about this work was that the 40 or so people who participated in it all did so with the same purpose, which was to celebrate Owen J. Roberts and bring it into its future. Everyone was there with a focused goal to be a positive change within the district and to be positive within the district. This was not, you know, I think it's unusual to participate in large groups such as this with where it's not, we don't take an air of negative talk or we're not looking to criticize. That's not what this group was. It really was about what do we want to be? And how can we positively get there as a community? And I think that, you know, it's interesting to see all of that work condensed into 3 slides and, you know, a couple, I don't even know if it's 100 words. But it's nice to see that work come together in this manner.
And Judy did a great job of corralling all of that discussion, all the words, all the thoughts into this document, not by herself, but I did a wonderful job.
So when we look at the mission and the vision, they both end with the same words, belonging for all. And I assume that that was intentional because I wouldn't think that that would just happen. It's not what I'm used to seeing. I'm used to seeing mission and vision that have very different words. But can you comment as to that?
Yeah, I can. It was just as we were going through the process, I know our administrative team is reading the same book that the board read in the fall regarding that sense of belonging. So that was a topic that resonated with everyone in the group as we were going through the process, that we really wanted to emphasize that we wanted a community where everyone, and like I said originally, our focus is on students, but this mission and vision applies to everyone in our school system. Parents, staff members felt this sense of belonging. So we were intentional to include it in both the mission and vision.
It's indicative of the thought process that belonging is imperative to success. And that's why, in my opinion, it appears in both.
I thought the experience was great. It's a very diverse group. We also had representation of administration from almost every building. Definitely representation of staff from every building. And we had multiple students from the high school, which was wonderful, who were not afraid to speak up and were not shy. And we had parents representation from every building. So I just thought it was really great to see that combination come together and really work together and hear the different perspectives and then kind of mold them all together to make, you know, the product that kind of came out. It was a very good experience.
I just wanted to just add that, these statements will be part of the comprehensive plan. The board will receive that plan as part of board line this week on Friday. And it will be part of the January school board meeting for your consideration for, to acknowledge receipt. It will be on the public website during the month of February, and then will be on the February board meeting for your consideration for approval.
Mrs. Peterson, can I also add one comment? We are live streaming, and if all of the board members could speak clearly into their microphone so that everybody can hear us, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
On it. Okay, we are going to move forward to agenda item 6, enrollment projections. Let me see, Dr. Mettman again.
All right. Good evening again. We're going to go over the enrollment projections for currently right now. Kind of hot off the press. So this data is, we received this data sort of in December. So this is just to sort of remind everybody as we kind of get into it a little bit here with the data that this is done every year. This is a yearly enrollment projections presentation. Typically, we've done it in November, but our vendor was a tad slower this year getting us the data, so we had to move it to January. Just some factors to consider as we take a look at enrollment. The purpose is to sort of look into the future with our 10-year enrollment numbers. So students changes in grade level cohorts from one grade level to the next. So 5th to 6th, 6th to 7th, sort of those same students going diagonally across the matrix of the enrollment data. changes in residential and area development. So any sort of development that's happening in the district, real estate prices and interest rates sort of has a little bit of effect on things. Historical district data and changes that have happened or that have occurred throughout our district. Private and parochial school enrollment increases or decreases. Obviously, charter school enrollment, which we are always monitoring from month to month. Full day kindergarten, which we are transitioning into coming next year, and then township parameters. So any sort of wants and needs that the township is looking for or allowing within our municipalities. There is a chart there. That's our charter school enrollment for this year and previous years. So that's where we are right now. We have 181 in charter schools this year. Broken out, we have 78 brick and mortar, 103 in cyber charter school. And we do reach out to our students that are in charter schools each year and parents if we can to sort of get a gauge of why they're in charter school and sort of options that we have. It is difficult to reach those parents via phone, but we do make efforts. Okay, we can go to the next slide, Dr. Cicito. So these are area developments that are being developed and growing in our community. And I am going to sort of go over each municipality or township in a little bit of detail. We do connect with the different townships that make up our school community. Things are busy in some and not in others. Starting with North Coventry. Townhouse development, Coventry Walks, that's 349 West Cedarville Road, but actually along Route 100, sort of across from the Lowe's. So possible 45 townhouses built in 1 to 2 years. Some fewer single homes that are going up in sort of spec homes in empty lots. And North Coventry is favoring open space. So they are, moving towards an open space. There's probably less land in North Coventry maybe than some of the other townships. So they're looking at how can they can kind of continue to grow their open space. East Coventry Township is one of 2 areas that are sort of areas that you'll see that will grow in the next 5 to 10 years. We have Coventry Chase. We have our last building permit issued in that development, townhouse development near East Coventry Elementary School. We have the villages of Fricks Lock. So that's a big tract of big tract of land, Route 724 and Fricks Lock Road. And then the Jones Motor Tract. That's a possible 181 townhomes and 101 singles. This is the land, if I'm not mistaken, that we moved from East Vincent to East Coventry to build capacity to East Coventry and create a little room in East Vincent school building without having to move any children because there are no children there at this point. West Vincent Township is slow, some single homes in some spec properties, and then Weatherstone, I believe, still has a pad that they can build another apartment complex on there as well. East Vincent Township, Riverstone Crossing, so 33 single home dwellings, and then 506 Park Road and 150 South Wall Street, that's sort of near Spring City, 14 townhomes in that area. And then we have East Nantmeal Township, South Coventry Township, and Warwick Township are our quietest neighborhoods or townships, and some single homes, but that's sort of all we have in those areas. So that gives you a look into what's looking to possibly be built in the near future. All right, go ahead, next slide, Dr. Cicito. All right, we're going to start out with East Coventry Elementary School. As you can see, there's the projection outlook. Keep in mind that we did roll into our vendor was well aware that we are moving to full day kindergarten next year. So there was a little bit of a reflection in the numbers throughout their statistical process, as well as any movement we have in our redistricting. So they use the new map. So that was done prior to the redistricting data pull and statistical process. As you can see, this is our biggest building of growth and really goes through some of the redistricting and also some of the development that's happening. And I took the numbers from the current December data. So we just ran the December data for the district. We usually run that about a week after the month's due. So 2024 December data. And I took a 5-year plus or minus. So we're looking at 175. That's our largest from 5 years. So this year into 2029, we're looking at a possible plus 175. Please keep in mind, as a reminder, when we did the redistricting presentation, East Coventry does have the most capacity in setup, small group instruction, student service areas, as well as classrooms. And we do have sort of the 2 classrooms that will be easily to be built onto the building on top of 2 of the classrooms that we can sort of add on quickly to that building if need be in the future. So that's what East Coventry is looking at right now. All right, go ahead, next building, please. So next up is East Vincent, which is another building of growth, but that 175 really comes into play with that Jones Motor Track piece of land. We're not looking as high at East Vincent. We're looking at 38 plus 38 in 5 years. So taking the current December data and moving it 5 years, we're looking at about a plus 38. So East Vincent looks steady as she goes. Not much change from where we are right now till sort of a 10-year outlook. All right, French Creek, obviously some big change for French Creek. We have their autistic support teachers who will be moving to North Coventry next year. And then we have about 50 or so students that are going to be moving from French Creek to East Coventry. So we have at French Creek, we have about a minus 27 the next 5 years. So our efforts sort of helped to change that enrollment at French Creek. You're not really seeing it too much in these numbers, but you know, some ups and downs. But we should see a little bit of sort of room open up. Not much, but that's kind of where we are at French Creek. So North Coventry, we're looking at about a minus 39 at North Coventry over a 5-year lookout. Sort of a building historically that was one of the higher buildings 6 years ago. It was probably number 1 at one point or number 2 in enrollment, and you're going to see sort of a decrease. And one of the, I guess, the buildings that's less than maybe East Coventry and East Vincent and French Creek. Still relatively close to the other buildings. West Vincent, we're looking at a minus 42 at a 5-year lookout from West Vincent. And, you know, we do see a little bit of a decline at West Vincent over a 10-year study there. But right around 5 years, we're seeing like a minus 42. So some room will open up at West Vincent as well. Moving to the middle school, we don't see much change at all in the middle school for those two years. Where we look, I calculated a minus 3 from now until 5 years from now. So not much at all noticeable, at least in 5 years. And then finally at the high school, we see sort of the second largest drop off, second largest change, I should say, other than East Coventry with a plus 75. We're looking at about a minus 115 in a 5-year turnaround at the high school. We do see sort of a more of our biggest drop. If we want to look out maybe 9 to 10 years, we could be going from about 1825 to 1630. So sort of good news for the high school because it goes sort of back to sort of maybe what it was not too long ago and provides some more room at the high school and needed room, I believe. So this could be a good thing for at least the space and facilities at the high school. Questions about enrollment?
Just a random question. But did the vendor provide any insight, like the overall trend for the district, you know, at the 10-year outlook, obviously, the longer you go, that more hazy it gets. But did they give you any insight on what like driving our downward trend of enrollment is?
Definitely like building is one, not as many developments going in or houses going in that had in the past. Townships are driving that. It seems when I meet with township supervisors and managers, townships aren't really interested in much building and as well as that is the community members as well. So that's a trend that we're seeing. That might be the biggest. They're also looking at babies being born and what the sort of birth rate is, not only in this area, but in other areas as well. So they're seeing a sort of like maybe a possible lower birth rate.
And the bubbles that go through, families move in, children go through the schools, and stay in the homes.
Yeah. Maybe not as much turnover as well in some of the developments that are getting older. Yeah.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 7, district software updates.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, so Frontline's first on the list, so I'll give you a quick overview of what it does and how we use it. Frontline Suite is comprised, of 4 modules: the absence management, time and attendance module, recruit and hire, and central. The management of these modules is shared by the business office and the HR office. And the Frontline absence management and time and attendance modules were both implemented by the business office in July of 2022. So almost 3 years we've been using this product. And that rollout was in an effort to modernize processes for both employees and managers. It replaced an existing system, Chronos. I don't know if you've ever heard of that system. It's big in hospitals and that type of setting. The absence management integrates with ESS, which is our subsystem. And this integration streamlines employee experience and reduces errors. For example, when an absence is requested, the subservice is automatically notified to fill that sub, if applicable, and also tracks the absence against the employee's absence balance, as well as flows that absence to the time card in the time and attendance module. Employees and supervisors see and approve absence requests as well as balances in that module, and balances are reflected in real time, and they include future absences that have been submitted, maybe not yet taken, but submitted. Both modules, time and attendance and absence management, create operational efficiencies such as eliminating paper time cards and absence request forms, as well as the space required to house those. They reduce the supervisor time required for review and approval, eliminating errors and calculating hours worked, and allow employees access to view their time and absence records. Frontline can be accessed remotely with various devices, computers, mobile devices, etc., by both employees and supervisors. And the employees are able to access their absence information, request absences, review and submit their time cards all in one place, making it very efficient. Supervisors are able to manage employee absences and timekeeping in one place. The recent implementation of recruit and hire and central modules provide further efficiencies with the transfer of employee data for the hiring function to the payroll function. And before I turn it over to Kristen for an overview on those 2 portions of the software, does anybody have questions on what I've just gone over? Oh, okay, all right, turn it over to Kristen.
Hello. So as Beth said, we had the other 2 products. In 2023, we implemented Recruit and Hire. And again, it kind of integrates already with the other 2 products that we already had. So when we would hire an employee through that system, it would automatically kind of shoot off the information to the other systems we had, which kind of made it a lot more efficient for, the HR department and the business office. We also feel that it has better note taking and information sharing about the candidate. So when you pull up the application page, you can kind of see everybody's notes in there, so we can share and communicate more effectively. And when I first started, we had Talent Ed, which was kind of a standalone product. And I'll never forget when I first looked at our approved to hire form and the amount of information that the supervisors would have to put on that form. I was just thinking at the peak hiring times, if they had to complete that much information for each individual candidate. So this has kind of completely streamlined that. The supervisors have very minimal amount of information that they now need to complete to notify HR that we want to move forward with this specific candidate. So then last year, we implemented Frontline Central, which has helped streamline the onboarding process. It automatically sends out all the onboarding paperwork, which routes directly to payroll and HR, and in HR specifically, like their personnel file versus like their health and medical file, benefits and all that is kind of all contained in there. It also reduced paper, so we're no longer having paper files for our employees. So everything is now electronic, which also makes it easier for employees to access some of their own information, like their professional development folders, which we have a filing cabinet with every employee and every time they take a class or something. So now, and you know, every year they ask me, oh, how many credits do I have? Well, now they have access to all that information themselves, which is wonderful. And let's see, and it also gives a level of access to different employees throughout the district. So our supervisors, for instance, like our principals, they now have the ability, if they want to check somebody's certifications, to kind of list everybody's certifications in there. So if they want to see if they can move people around based on certs, they can do that. And then also clearance renewal process has been streamlined. We put in all the last dates of people's clearances. So those employees are automatically notified within when they have 90 days to complete their clearances for renewal. I also get a report, I think, when they're a month out. So then we start sending our nasty grams that you need to get this done or else you're not allowed to work. So those processes have all been a lot more efficient now because of Central. Oh, and then VidCruiter. I almost forgot about that. So we implemented VidCruiter in 2023. That's our online screening applicant process. So if we have some of those positions like paraprofessionals where we have the pool that just remains open pretty much all year, anytime we see candidates that meet the criteria, the generalist then sends out a VidCruiter so that they can screen the applicants to see if they want to bring them in for an in-person. It's also useful, obviously, during that hiring time when we're looking at our K-6, because we do get the most applicants in those positions. And this also allows our supervisors to kind of screen candidates on their own time so that they don't have to be in, you know, specific interview slots. If they have time, like a half hour here to just review a couple candidates at a time, it helps them with that as well. Any questions? Good.
Back. School pay. School pay was implemented in the beginning of the 2018-19 school year as an electronic funds collection resource accepting both credit cards and debit card payments. We started out implementing it for lunch account deposits, and then we started branching out to other areas like the technology fees, parking permits, community swim program, summer enrichment program. We also added elementary field trips and secondary field trips, IB exam fees, athletic camps and clinics, student activity fundraisers, parking fines, and we continue to develop it as the needs occur. School pay has streamlined our processes by reducing the risks inherent in collecting cash and checks, provides ease of use for families and all things OJR for multiple students in a family. Everything's all in one place, which is really nice. It provides comprehensive internal rostering, which includes electronic permission slips and medical forms and emergency contacts, as well as real-time payment information. It also collects food service account payments, and it has resolved some of the escalating issues that we had with insufficient funds and bounce check problems. And it also is a very easy to process refund. Think about when we had COVID and all the field trips were canceled from the spring. At that point, we had to issue hundreds of paper checks in order to refund families for those missed trips. This would have been a few clicks and everybody would have been refunded immediately right back to their payment method. It's well received. It has a 97.3 adoption rate with our families. And while it's our preferred method, we still offer cash for a few things, small dollar cash and carry items. And of course, we will always work with families with hardships. Are there any questions about school pay?
Excuse me, yes. So I just used school pay last week
Mhm.
and I filled out the permission slip and all the emergency contact stuff.
Mhm.
And then I had to fill it out like 3 more times on 3 more pieces of paper. It's like, not necessary. It's all the same information. It's all electronic. We just do it once, like one time.
I don't, Kelly, do you wanna?
I was gonna ask the same functionality.
Yeah.
The,
Kelly
I'll
is our
piggyback
guru
that
school
too.
pay. She is working on that particular issue. This is Kelly Kenny. She is. our
Good evening.
guru.
So depending on the trip that you're completing for, I know the high school trips with students driving to specific locations themselves or taking the van, there's some different forms that we're still working to combine into their school pay registration form. So I know some of those trips at the higher levels have extra forms that we haven't quite done away with yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, there was like 3, there are definitely different forms, but they
Okay.
all ask for the
The same.
exact same information. So I think we do a little better.
Sure. Were they, which, were they
Um,
secondary trips?
It was the DECA trip. was
Okay.
One of them, yeah.
Okay.
so.
I will look into
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think it's just the, understanding if there is the capability of functionality of, our children are assigned to, assigned to our login, there's a certain amount of information that is populated about our child. Being in a situation where we could, for instance, enter their insurance information once in the year and would automatically populate, would be a huge functional change for parents and not have to every time, and again, there are field trips that I'm filling out 3 forms for and having to manually enter, insurance, the same number for all 3 of them, same, my contact information. Thinking more along the lines of Skyward and other programs in which we are able to assign information to our child's record that automatically populates some of this.
I have asked school pay for that. We've also considered that being, information housed in Skyward from the annual
Mm.
update that we have to do. But there is been a while since I looked into it, but there was a specific reason why that was advised against. And I believe it's insurance could be changing throughout the year and parents updating that and medical conditions changing. But we will certainly look into that further. I completely understand.
Right, at that
I
time, then the onus is on
I used to do it all.
Certainly other,
Overstamping that.
other areas that we are interacting with outside of the school have the ability to give us like, this is your insurance. Is it still accurate? And you
Right.
click yes
Yeah.
or no.
Mhm.
And
Right.
that would be great.
Because the other thing is,
Absolutely.
you're not actually validating that I put in my child's correct insurance information
Correct.
anyway.
Right.
Oh, there's-
No, not if
And
you're doing
it's
that.
really only needed if there's an emergency
Right.
and hopefully there is not. Yeah.
The question I had about, I understand when I am, filling something out on school pay, for instance, for a school field trip, I don't pay a fee, right? I believe I don't have a convenience fee if I'm paying for, but we do for our school lunches and our
Mhm.
school meals. So is it then understood that the district is absorbing that for the fee for field trips, or is it being incorporated in part of the charge of the field trip?
Incorporated.
And I know there's been a discussion in the past about how we manage charges and the chargebacks for school lunch. But I think the board would be interested in seeing what those numbers are that the district builds into field trips. And what that might look like if we took a similar approach to school lunches. And how we could perhaps make those things the same. What would it look like if we built charges into the school lunch fees so that we're not paying individual fees every time? add
We
in?
can look at that, but there might be PDE rules. We just need to look into the rules for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wanna-
believe
'cause
there's
I-
a reason why.
It is
Understood.
sort of a,
Yep.
not only a sore subject for some families, but just, it would be helpful, I think, for parents to understand why there may be a difference in fees associated with field trips versus fees associated with lunch chart, adding lunch to it.
Also school pay, how are we doing with the glitches? Cause I feel like there's been some, especially with the accounts. I know we're not getting as many, messages of our kids, like, there's been multiple times I've gone into school pay and my kids are negative $11. And luckily they still get lunches, but I had no idea.
The, with the transition to Skybird, the automated Skylerts are not connected to, or the lunch balances are not housed to be connected to the automatic notifications. So we are manually doing notifications once a week on Friday afternoons.
Did that change? Like last year we.
Yes.
got some-
It was, yes.
So what are we?
The
doing with it?
Skybird change is
Skybird.
what affected
I get
that.
automatic
that for that one then.
notifications.
But
from
you
school
can,
pay.
within school pay, you
Okay.
can set up,
You can. set
parents can designate their own low balance actions, whether that be a notification to them when the balance hits a designated amount that the parent sets, or you could also set up an auto replenishment that would have the same effect. That's all parent driven within school pay.
Yeah, great segue to my personal brag about school pay now. Okay. All jokes aside, an enhancement I would love to see is some sort of budget on, especially in the school lunch category, because when she said she didn't get I'm getting notifications every 2 days about my high schooler being low funds.
Yeah.
And it's because on Tuesday she's hosting a lunch party for all our friends, and on Wednesday she doesn't eat. So I was like, all right. All jokes aside, though, I do have a question just about all these software platforms in general. Are they hosted on prem? Are they software as a service? Like, how are we maintaining these platforms?
This is not on.
All fast.
Web-based.
For the excess spending, the budget, we are able to set notes on students' accounts through food services. So when they go through a checkout line, we could say, hey, you're capped at $5 today, $10, but that's all, again, parent
Who do I exactly need to
notifications to
contact?
food service.
I realize like,
Yes.
I called about it too, and I know we can do those things, but that means then I can't, like, they switched, sounds silly, but they switched ice cream day.
Mm-hmm.
So I set my thing up where my kids can have snack before it was whatever, Monday, Wednesday. Well, then they switched. And I know it's not a big deal, but we don't have that autonomy or ability to go in for our own kids and say, yeah, they can have a snack today, or no, they can't. And then also what he was saying with the budget part, we lost the ability for the kids to understand money when we took away cash. And so at least if we can set up a budget and then be able to figure out, like, they get X amount of dollars a day. I know we can do that through you guys, but we can't do it through school pay. And I think that that's a bit of a hurdle for parents, that we can't go in there on our own and say, sure, go ahead and buy X, Y, and Z today. That's fine. I have no problem with it. So it's one of those things that, again, we can't do on our own.
In the food service line, they're not looking at school pay though. That's, I think, where the part of the hiccup is, that they can't set that within school pay and then have it be effective at the register.
The point of sale system is a different system, and that's also why there's payment delays, and sometimes the glitches with items purchased. It's all the systems talking together, and there's a lag time there.
School pay is just a payment collection option. That's its role. So it doesn't necessarily interact with the modules at the cash registers in the lunch line.
You had said that you're still taking cash for certain items. Are there items that you don't take cash for, or services that you don't take cash for?
Yes, I mean, we prefer that most of those items, we prefer that most of those items that I had outlined in the beginning are all done through school pay wherever possible. Some of the small cash and carry things that we were talking about, like when they sell the candy canes at the musical or things of that nature, that makes more sense to be able to have cash because it's quicker and people can go through the line and they're $1, $2, something like that. So things that are of a quicker and smaller nature is what we're saying that we're accepting cash for.
But you don't take cash for lunches or field
Um,
trips?
Well, we do where there's a hardship, where there's, a request, someone says, we don't have credit cards or we don't have checks, that type of thing.
Are there plans to continue to expand that functionality? I'm just thinking like for my elementary school, where it goes to like the book fair. It's like, well, how much cash do I give you for
Yeah.
the eraser you plan on buying
Yeah,
today versus
absolutely.
next time you get a book?
Sure, I'm just making a note of it now, so we can look into that.
I
And some of
will
those
tell you,
things
book
are run
fair
by
does
the
have
PTA.
online. I was gonna say the book fair is online. You give them you can give them a credit, like they get an
Yeah,
hour and
right.
give their last.
Through Scholastic.
No,
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 you
no,
can
you
add-
$20.
You basically
can
set
add a
us
set
an
amount.
amount with Scholastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just not with school, again, like it's
not
another,
school pay.
Yeah, that goes.
Right. And I think because that's Scholastic run, that's Scholastic's whole system that we don't have. As much as we can get into school pay, trust me, I'm reviewing all deposits that come in, trying to rope them all into one umbrella.
Thank you.
Told you I'd come back. Good evening. We're going to talk about the new migration to the new version of Skyward. The reason why we had to do the new migration to Skyward is SMS, which is the version we had previously, was end of life. Skyward gave us a 5-year timeline to really do this, and we actually been planning this for the last 4 years. We did not want to be one of the first districts to do it, so we piggybacked off of Kennett School District, and they did it first and solved all our problems for us. We took a team down there and worked with them. The guidance counselors, high school technology team, administration really helped us out in our migration, which for an SMS school went pretty well for us because we did learn other school districts. Springfield will be going through it next year, and they're already meeting with us already. The biggest reason why we had to migrate to the new version is cybersecurity. The new version is actually more robust with cybersecurity, meets all our insurance standards. Mr. Crumrine and I always talk about our vendors and what is needed, and we're constantly refreshing and looking at our cyber measures that we have. And also we have Skyward is now hosted off campus. It is a part of our cyber plan to really diverse the network. As you know, many districts are getting hit with cyber attacks, ransomware, and things like that. The more diverse your network is off campus and different vendors, the harder it is to do. For example, I won't name the district. All their stuff was on-prem, they got hit and everything was locked and they were down for 2 weeks. We know what happened in a neighboring district last year. They shut down school early. We've been planning really hard with managing our network and being a diverse network and hosting things on that we can and off where we can. Makes financial sense and cyber sense. The new features of the new Skyward, which is called Q or Cumulative, really from a parent perspective, the new app is really robust and it's going to allow us to do more things. If you remember the old Skyward app for parent was really a web-based version. You really couldn't download it, you had it. But from the kids' standpoint and the parent standpoint, it's really going well. And we're going to roll out some more features as we connect more things to that. I know some people have questions about SkyAlert. That is not Skyward. Okay, that is the school messenger program that, thank God, Michael runs. But we work together with Michael. We're going to move to Parent Square next year, which really, if you know Parent Square from other districts, many other districts use it, many of our neighboring districts use it. It's going to really centralize our communications a lot better. So SkyAlert will be going away. School Messenger will be going away. A lot of other things we're doing, communications going away, and we're go to this portal of Parent Square. So you're going to hear more of that coming in the fall. We'll have a test run with actually East Coventry School this spring. really testing out the programs and things like that. So that is not Skyward. So I just want to make sure that was understood. The snow calls and all that stuff comes from School Messenger, and Skylar will be transferring to Parent Square next year. As for grading and stuff, none of the grade books and stuff changed at all with Skyward. So with the new version, so that transition was great for our teachers and staff because it just rolled over. And, you know, in high school from Canvas to Skyward, we have that connection, Google Classroom, things like that, all are seamless within Skyward for the new version. So we really didn't have any issues with grading and things like that from the teacher standpoint. Questions?
Grading. Special ed, if your child has modified material, you cannot get numbers and letters now. So it has changed for me as a personal experience and
Yeah.
other families that I know. So now my kid's report card looks like M's, and I have no idea when I go in there to see
Right.
what they've actually.
That didn't change from Skyward. That was a process that changed internally. So we are working on that for next year. I know the curriculum department supervisors principals for the progress report, really revamping that for next year. We were kind of we were thinking about moving to the a new progress report this year, and then things happened and then they changed things. So it's just a matter of how they're inputting it this year. So that's not a Skyward issue. That was an input issue. So that is something that we're working on, the principals working on, and all the departments are working on to change again for next year. So there will be a new or modified, hopefully, elementary progress report next year. So that this is kind of that transitional year that they were doing it, not doing it. We went back to the old and things kind of got last minute put back in. And we'll check on why special ed's not showing up that way. That should have been the same, but I'm not sure how they're reporting it in. But again, that wasn't a migration issue. That was an input issue.
I do wanted to make a comment when we make these changes and we're preparing for them. I feel like one of the things I struggle with knowing that we're going through change is sometimes the changes aren't actually ready to roll out. It feels like sometimes, or we haven't thought out certain pieces of it, and then we try to roll out bits and pieces, and then we change them again. So then we're asking our community, our kids, and our families also then to make multiple changes throughout these steps. I would like to see throughout when we do these system changes and such, a much better transition where we're thinking ahead. I'm not saying we're not thinking ahead. I don't think we're thinking ahead about all of the pieces before we actually present them to the staff, before we present to the parents, before we present it to the students. Because I think it's causing some confusion as to where this is going. We're being told this is going to be better, but to be honest, like some of it is not good right now.
Right.
Right. And I mean, when we roll out new applications at work, we have a pilot program, we have user acceptance testing. I don't hear those things happening within the district.
So with Skyward, we did. I mean, we did all that with Skyward. We tested every piece of it with the new pros. Now, the issue with Skyward, which are with I call it PayPal, but school pay, we could have connected that, but the cost was outrageous. And school pay does have that option for parents to come in and get that notification. Like you said, maybe that should be rolled out to the parents to know, hey, this is the process to do that, to sign up so you still get those notifications. So the notifications didn't go away. They were just moved somewhere else. The cost was astronomical. When we did some of these things, some of these vendors take schools for a ride, and it's not fair. I mean, they're just saying, oh, you meant a new thing. No, we didn't. We just migrated to a new program. You upgraded a version. No, you got to pay $10,000 to make that connection again. No, we're not. You know, and that's why we're looking at other vendors like Parent Square and like other things that are not going to charge us those connections to our student management system, or it's a seamless connection we already have. A lot of them said, oh, it's going to happen. And all of a sudden we go, oh no, now you need this. Well, no, you didn't tell us when we signed the contract. And Jackie and I know we go through them and go after them. That's great at that, like hammering them too. But by that time it's too late because what they promised didn't happen and we're doing a rollout. That happened probably with one or two vendors this year with our upgrade. The rest of it, we did test and did everything and it was fine. And the other two promised us it wouldn't, and they didn't fall through, and they're not going to be our vendors next year.
I think I'm talking more about what, like, I understand the school pay part and it being too much. I'm thinking about Skyward and we're talking about the grades and the grade books. The rollout of that could have gone much better. Like, it shouldn't be
Right.
thought out in the middle of a school year while the staff is doing 20 other things. Like,
Right.
they're also teaching
So-
and then,
From a Skyward perspective, all that worked. Everything worked fine. It was a process internally that got delayed. So with the program, with the grade book, with everything else, with the progress report, everything was fine. The progress report was going to be changed and it didn't. So things that were delayed that had to be done in Skyward that we do every year was, instead of August, it happened 2 weeks before it happened, which caused elementary to have the issue. Secondary, now, you gotta remember with secondary, we would have heard if there was a problem with grading in secondary. We didn't hear anything. It was that change in that progress report that caused that delay. Had nothing to do with Skyward and Gradebook itself. That all was the same. It was another process that was different. Automation and stuff, everything worked exactly the way it was supposed to. Other question?
Yeah, it just kind of rubbed me a little bit in my project management space. I think to April's larger point, it's not saying that something in Skyward failed or some sort of implementation of grades failed. The overall change management of the entirety of the process is where the failure sounds like it happened. Like, okay, we're going to this version of Skyward, but we also need these subsequent tasks to complete before we do. This one got delayed, but we went ahead anyway. Right. And then that delay wasn't communicated to the broader community in the change management process. So just not to point fingers or poke holes in anything that happened, just kind of I guess people are asking for a greater sense of care in that change management process going forward, so that the larger community is kind of aware of what's going on and not suddenly surprised by a change that might seem minor to some, but it's major to others.
Understood. Any other questions?
On the Parent Square, are there other districts that are trying that out this year? So we'll learn from their experience?
So, hey, Springford went through it last year. Kennett did last year too. There's Downingtown, there's a lot of districts have gone to it already. We've already in the spring have planned to go visit all those schools and pilot. Actually, Parent Square came from a lot of our teachers that live outside of the district that are using it already, and they're very excited that we're moving forward, because as parents, they're the ones that came to us and say, please look at Parent Square. So we actually took that from our own staff saying, can you do this for us? And we looked at it and it's a great product and we're going to move forward. You're welcome.
Timely? Is that what I'm here for? Okay. Timely, I'll give you timely through the middle school lens. And then I assume Mr. Kohler is going to give you his experience with timely through the high school lens. Our experience with timely at the middle school is not what we hoped it would be. And I want to be very careful because I don't know exactly if that's fully Timely's fault or a combination of Timely not being able to do some of what our middle school schedule needed to do. And in some regards, a middle school schedule, a bit of a diva, because we also ask for things to be, students to be teamed. We'd like 100% students to be teamed. So there's some other very specific things that we need a scheduling software to do for us. The process of working with Timely was, I think, smooth for us last year. We met from the time we started, I would say last fall. We met a couple times a month, and we had homework to do. Make sure you have this in a spreadsheet for us, send it to us ahead of time. We'll kind of populate our program with that. So it was really a step-by-step nice process. There were conversations that were held between our representative and our team where I would flat out tell them that's not going to work. They would assure me, yes, it will. We've seen this before. We can make this work and meet your needs. And I said, it's not going to work. It's what you're proposing with what we need will not work that way. Yeah, we'll be okay. So to some degree, I probably trusted more than I should have. And in the end, and there was a lot of back and forth. Timely did not speak with Skyward. They didn't play well together. So there was a lot of, we had to send Timely things. They would have to merge things into Timely, then send it back to us before we rolled over to Q, the new version of Skyward, which added then another layer because we were kind of moving things from old Skyward to new Skyward. So there was a lot of moving pieces. In the end, when we had our finished Timely sent kind of their finished skeleton of a schedule to us, which we then translated into Skyward, and then put on some of you have been in my office, you've seen our scheduling board, put on our scheduling board, and then we sit down and look at it. And this was, late summer. This summer, we kind of looked at the board and said, that's not going to work. That won't work. That class can't be there. Those two classes can't be offered at the same time. Things that we thought we had worked through and figured out with Timely during our process from the fall until the summer, that when things came to fruition and we looked at it spatially, it did not work. So, middle school will not be working with Timely again this summer. And it's not because I feel like necessarily their program can't work with us, but because I don't know 100% that it will, I'm not willing to commit. I'm in my mind, I need to be fiscally responsible when it comes to that. And if I can't say that I know what they're doing is going to work for us, I'm not going to commit those district funds to that. So we're going to work through and continue to try to figure out some of the hiccups in our schedule that we have, and try to find some ways to smooth some of that out. And if we're able to do that, maybe we'll revisit Timely being able to help us when we feel like we have some other things kind of figured out on our end. But for us, I couldn't commit. They wanted us to commit, a couple months ago, and I simply wasn't ready or willing to do that, not knowing with greater certainty that it'll work better for us this year. So until I feel more certain, we'll stay away from Timely. Questions for me from the middle?
Just a quick one.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, was it a situation where Timely got you 90% of scheduled and you just had to go in and figure out the exceptions, or was it just?
Well, it's very interesting, and that 90% is an interesting percent that you throw out there, because when we were talking with Timely, went with Timely. That was, we have great success with districts. We'll guarantee we'll have 95% of your student schedules done. And of course, for us, that was very intriguing. If we're lucky, we'll get 50% of our total student schedules run through Skyward, and the rest we have to figure out by hand and fix by hand and everything else. So when I hear 90%, you've now got my attention. And when we were said and done, they continued to throw, oh, look, you're 95%, 97%. And we would look at it and go, what? Like, we're not. Like, every schedule I pull up right now has a hole in it somewhere. So I'm not sure what their percentage was based on. I can't speak to that. But I know it wasn't 90-something%, or I wouldn't have had to start from scratch again in August, July. Questions? Turn it over to high school.
This is the yin and the yang of Timely, so I'm going to play the opposite side of the coin. So in our work with Timely, we got both the scheduling software that they provide, but also the consultancy that they provide. I think when we look at the high school, when you start factoring levels of college prep and honors and AP, like we have hundreds and hundreds of unique courses that we're trying to schedule 1,800 students for, most of which are choosing 7 different options within that. I have done a lot of scheduling up until coming here. I was primarily the scheduler in the schools that I'd worked in, often with about 600 students, and maybe those students had 2 choices to of a course to take for their English class. I could keep most of that stuff in my head. At the high school, with all the options that we have here, we just can't keep that in somebody's brain. And our scheduling process was about an 8-month long scheduling process from January up until the weekend before students showed up, which was why we reached out to Timely and why we wanted support from them. I think similar to the middle school, we ran into some hiccups. You know, some of that was because of the rollover to cumulative. They were transparent with us from the start that Timely and the old version of Skyward did not communicate with each other. And that when we did the rollover to cumulative, they would felt much better about those two systems communicating with each other. We decided that we would take the kind of step back and do some more manual entry last year while waiting for the rollover. I think the other piece was as we rolled over into cumulative just functioned differently than Skyward did with some things, particularly around lunch periods. And because that did not function the way that it did before, that created some holes in our schedule. You know, the other thing is in our conversations with Timely, we kept running into these situations, and they work with lots and lots of different schools on their schedule, where they would say, huh, we've never seen that before. Huh, nobody's ever done that before. And the more that you hear that conversation, you either start to think that you're a genius and that you figured out something that nobody else has figured out, or that maybe you've made things more complicated. And at the conclusion of this, like my conclusion is that we've made things more complicated. And that was sort of the consultancy that we got from them. It's part of the reason that we are shifting from a 5-day schedule to, from a 5-day cycle to an AB cycle next year in simplifying course patterns. You know, overall, 99% of our kids got their core course requests. What really blew up the schedule is because we had some of our special education students that had 1 day of seminar and some that had 2 days of seminar and some that had 3 days of seminar. It scheduled all of those incorrectly. And so when you have something that's scheduled as tight as it is, and then all of those get scheduled incorrectly, it was a lot of manual work to go back and fix what had happened with lunch periods and what had happened with special education seminar courses. And that created a big bubble for us. I think we have learned from that. We are simplifying our schedule. We are doing some things with regards to our course patterns, but we felt that it was worth trying a second go round and working with them with some of the adjustments that we've made. So we are partnering with Timely again and working with them on our schedule for next year. Any questions at the high school level?
Okay. Agenda item 8, appointment of board members to standing committees and school board representatives by the board president. You will see my recommendations of the appointments for the standing committees for 2025 based on repeating some chairs and vice chairs where having long-term knowledge has been paying off, and I think has created great relationships and giving opportunities for some of our newer members to take some leadership opportunities as we move forward this year. And of course, based on the preferences that you filled out for me as well. So, Mr. Graham, do you want to make a recommendation with this, or do I have to?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Chester County Intermediate Unit Board, I don't think is a committee, and we should, I think, also call out Chester County School Authority Board, because it actually is 2 positions. We fill both with the same person. Some districts actually fill those with 2 separate people. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, we can change the language for CCIU board. And the representatives. Is that the only one you want to change?
No, and add Chester County School Authority. So the
Oh.
IU can't actually own
Yep,
property,
yep.
so the School Authority Board is actually a separate board.
We can add that.
Okay, thanks.
So then do I? What's my action here?
In the past, we haven't really had an action. You're appointing those committees and then we'll have them on the board meeting agenda.
Done.
Okay.
With that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.